Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Hello? Hi. Great to be back in Singapore. Lovely to see you all again. And so we're going to kick off today's show with sort of a macro view of the world from an agency perspective, because agencies do a lot of thinking about this kind of stuff. They have to, because they have to strategize. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Little bit of an angle to make the fireside more fire-like.
We're just going to have to edit that one out. But anyway, so obviously agencies have to think long term, particularly for their clients, and this is what gives them sort of their place in the ecosystem. Leigh's come on today to talk about some of those macro trends and how it's affecting the thinking of sort of one of the largest holdcos in the world and in the region. But before I kick off, I'll just let Leigh just do a brief introduction of himself, because it'd be rude not to.
Thank you, Ciaran. Thank you for inviting me to ATS. It's been a while since I've been grilled by Ciaran, so be gentle. My name's Leigh Terry. As Rachel said, I'm lucky enough to run IPG's media assets here in the region. I think the latest Reckmer figures, we've got about $9 billion worth of media funds under investment here in APAC, and just over 5,000 staff. And by background, I've always been agency side. Started in advertising, then into media, then into digital, data and direct. Probably the longest title, but I think certainly the most fulfilling in terms of where the world has gone and where it will continue to go. So thank you for having me.
Great, let's kick it off. Outside of the immediate sort of economic shifts in the space, I want to talk about sort of long-term stuff that is affecting things like sort of demographic shifts, etc. I want to talk about that from your perspective. Like, just give us an overview of some of the things that you are thinking about from an agency perspective, because there's a lot going on in this region. It's very different from Europe, very different from the US, very different from Latin. Every region has its own sort of idiosyncrasies. So I want to get a sense of what you guys are thinking about, like type of things, like immediate things.
Yeah. I mean, I do want to thank Rachel first for the statement around unraveling the chaos, because that probably surmises the last 25 years in agency land, which we are here to serve and advise clients on the basis of helping them unravel that chaos. But from an APAC perspective, I think we are the most diverse region, culturally, economically, almost in every way possible. So I've been doing my role now for nearly 8 years. I love APAC, but you're right, it's not the United States of APAC, just in the same way as it wasn't the United States of Europe, although there was certainly a lot greater consistency when I was doing Europe 20 years ago. So from an APAC perspective, the numbers are up. It's, I know Rachel started with a slide that was not quite a frown, but yes, it is a tough year for everybody, and I think irrespective of whether you're in the media marketing, ad tech ecosystem, business in general, any client in any sphere of activity, business is tough at the moment, and that's partly down to cost of capital, government restrictions around fiscal support. There's still challenges as a result of some of the geopolitical tensions that are certainly being felt in supply chain. But I look at APAC through a very positive lens. Yes, we're looking at spend increases, which is great. And that's, I think, a factor as much as anything of general and genuine growth in the region. There are pockets of absolute growth, and I'll always call out India as something that just keeps going and growing. Both India and China are still growing, and they are still growing at enviable rates compared to the rest of the world, certainly compared to Europe and the US, but they are declining from the rates that we've been used to for the last 2 decades here in the region. So whilst there's growth, it's not the super growth that we've seen historically. But some of the trends that are important to us through an agency lens within APAC, you talk about demography. We are an aging population. I'm certainly one of those.
You look great, though.
Thank you, my friend.
Honestly.
That's £10 for you later.
I call it the ad tech glow up. Everybody needs one.
But yeah, from a media perspective, and an advertising perspective, we are an aging population. We're also one that is still in different parts of the region, transferring from regional and rural into urbanisation. So there's demography changes in terms of how old people are and where people are. I also think from media and a marketing perspective, and this isn't new, and most trends aren't new. This is something that has been discussed for certainly the last 2 decades, because the data has been there that as there is aging population, as there are people with net wealth that are certainly not necessarily the 16 to 24-year-olds that a lot of brands still target. There's a lot of people that now I'm in I've just got my half century, so I want to bat on for my century. But there's a lot of products that I'm now interested in that need to be promoted. The focus of advertising needs to skew to where the audience is.
Do you think that has changed? Like, this is an interesting with demographics. I spoke to a brand there during the week because they're speaking later on, and they have shifted their strategy around this. Like, so. Like, they're targeting sort of existing or older sort of consumers rather than running after the kids, basically, just to try and get them in the sort of like sales cycle. So are you seeing that change as well? Like, I mean, this seems like a very much a global trend. Like,
it is.
Demographics is affecting every single country. Like, birth rates are down across the board. Like, there's no, I mean, I think probably Africa or LATAM is probably the only 2 continents that are seeing increased birth rates.
Yeah. People's Democratic Republic of Congo is definitely on the up. Nigeria.
It's a growth area.
Pakistan. It's, I love looking at data, even separate to what you look at population trends. There are 4 or 5 markets that are going to explode in population because their birth rates are going massively up. But if you compare that to advanced nations, and Japan is always the one that gets picked out as truly aging population that isn't being replaced, as to fundamentally marketing is selling products to an audience. If that audience is fundamentally changing in where it lives, what it requires, and how old it is, and certainly for those in more emerged markets with disposable income around looking after their healthcare, more ethically sourced products, there is a change in where there is consumer demand. And that's always something that, from an agency perspective, we have to look at. The other thing as well, and it links much more back to the ATS Summit, is the technological advancements of where 5G, where fundamentally product and Internet of Things, which again we've talked about for a long time, but where that is truly going to start to come into its own, I think is fascinating around a region like APAC. But also, economically speaking, there are some markets where there is growth. There is also, and it is a global trend, massive income parity and disparity. I think what we also need to look at is that where there is technology disparity, because that absolutely will impact wealth creation and fundamentally where people will want to live and have good prospects of good life.
Yeah, I want to shift the gears a little bit. Like, obviously, China has an outsized influence across the entire region, right? And it's gone through some troubling sort of economic water over the last sort of 12 to 24 months. The property market implosion, and then sort of like the sort of CCP's how would I say it, muzzling of raw animal instincts in the sort of startup world and technology world. I mean, how is that sort of ripping its way through the space here? Like, because that sort of was the bulk of the APAC growth. Has that sort of influenced a lot of your strategy across the region?
I think from an innovation perspective, there is still a hell of a lot going on in APAC that is that should be celebrated. I mean, even just pulling some stats together for this. I think globally there's about 3.5 million patents that were applied for in 2022, but of which about 1.6 million so nearly 50% were from China. The US was a third of that figure. And in fact, if you look at the 8 out of the top 10 applying companies, so Huawei, Samsung, Mitsubishi from Japan, yeah, there was Qualcomm from the US, but 8 out of those, the top 10, were from the Northeast Asia region. So there is a lot of smarts and technology and innovation that's going on out of this region. One thing that is impacting it, though, and this is where some of those geopolitical factors come into it, or more political factors come into it, is 2 years ago where there were over 100 major investments done in either US firms in China headquartered businesses or China firms in US headquartered. As a result of those tensions and saber rattling, that over a 2-year period, that's gone from north of 100 deals to now 26. I think even just in the last couple of weeks, and I know that we're in an election cycle, and that is absolutely impacting a lot of the short-term advertising increases, along with all the sporting events. But in the last couple of weeks, as the US elections will ramp up, and we'll all get bored of that over the next 5 months, but the regulation in the US looking to limit US companies' investments in China, Hong Kong and Macau-based companies that are in the field of AI, quantum and quantum computing. It's where does investment come from? And that does have a ripple effect down based on how brands and businesses are looking at where politicians might be looking to put restrictions.
Obviously, with Shein is a good example of that. We're looking to IPO in New York, and got basically told they can't do it because of there'll be restrictions on them, and now they're looking to IPO in London, which I think London's delighted about, 50 billion. It's about the only thing that's IPO in London of any worth in the last 20 years. So let's again talk about sort of it's buzzword alert time, people. AI, right? Jeez, I hate that word.
That took about 9.5 minutes.
I mean, every time I say that word, I throw up in my mouth because it's just utter bullshit. Anyway, we'll let you decide that. But
say what you're really thinking. Don't lead the witness.
Sam Altman, who is probably the greatest opportunist in the history of tech, he ran an incubator, and then he saw an opportunity. Now he's heralded as some sort of superstar. He's no superstar. He has said that like 90% of core marketing functions can be done by AI, and he then obviously attacked, didn't attack, but like said that agencies are going to be like created, and then you've got all the usual gobshites, Scott Galloway piling in, who doesn't know anything about advertising and still makes a living out of it. I don't know how that man is taken seriously by anybody.
Gobshite is a very technical Irish term.
Yeah, it is. You can quote me on that, because he's a gobshite. So I want to get your opinion on this, because like we've been using machine learning in ad tech and in this industry for the better part of 2 decades, right? Mm-hmm. They come up with a parlor trick, which is what AI is, right? Generative AI is a parlor trick. It's just like some magic show. Like the underlying technology is effectively machine learning, right? So I want to get a sense from an agency point of view, what you think about the narrative around AI and effect on agencies. Because like Rachel's pointed out that agencies have a huge function, right? The entire industry is fragmented. Look at the amount of ad networks and walled gardens that are popping up, right? Look at the retail media network space. It's a bloody mess outside of Walmart and Amazon, right? You have hundreds of these RMNs, right? You have every day like Revolut, JP Morgan, Uber, United Airlines. Bloody, I could go on and go on and go on about the amount of walled gardens are popping up. Like, no amount of AI is going to be able to navigate that mess, right? No AI is on a phone call when a client rings up and shouts down the phone about an ad running the wrong side, right? Or a KPI not being. The AI is going to go, what's your problem? Here's a text prompt. Like, here you go. Calm down. Give me, here's 5 points on how to take yourself out of that bad zone. Mm-hmm. So I'm just blithering on here. Just to answer the question then, sorry.
I don't disagree with you. I don't possibly not quite as vociferous in my either my fear of AI that's much reported out there or its usage. There's a phrase my mum used to use of everything. If you're everything to everyone, you're nothing to no one. And I think AI is a catch-all to everything right now. And if you look at investor calls, whether it's in the agency space or whether it's in the tech space or client space, the mere mentions of AI in investor calls transcripts has gone massively through. It's almost like if you invented an ice cream, you just call it an AI ice cream, and you're suddenly going to be the new trendy thing. In our space, there's always a lot of hype and trends and soothsayers, and if you've been around long enough, and I have, some of it is immediately justified and some of it takes time to play out. So you go back 10, 12 years ago, everything's going to be programmatic. And programmatic absolutely has played a significant role, but it's not, certainly not the be-all and end-all. Consultants getting into the agency space, they now have, and some are doing it really well, others a lot less well. So there are trends that get talked about. They take up all the oxygen in the room for a 6-month period, and then they actually calm down and it actually does transpire into something. I do think AI is a bit different. I do think it is some of the hype, or the hype is justified, but with the caveat of how you bucket it. Because you're right, there's a lot of AI which, quite frankly, is a continuation of machine learning, and that's been around for donkey's years. I think AI truly comes into its own when you look at very specific use cases. And through an agency lens, I'm looking at it not just from a media agency perspective, but across the agency landscape as a whole. And there are certain things that it can, will, and do even better when it refined, because we need to still appreciate that it's in its infancy. But it is going to have will it have a seismic impact or a tectonic impact? I think it will. Will it be an extinction level event that some are predicting? Absolutely not. Because I do think, I'm a huge believer in creativity and human ingenuity. I'm also a big believer in picking up the phone when a client calls and their ad's in the wrong place. So there will be those elements. Somebody described it to me last night of, unless AI can, AI is being effective in many applications, including big-scale medical data. But unless AI can get the nuance and understanding that a doctor has when he's having a literally one-on-one talk with a patient to understand how they're feeling, the nuance, literally looking them in the eyeball, AI yet isn't going to be able to replicate that. So I'm looking through a 5-7 year lens. AI will impact our business. Galloway, who you referenced earlier, he said a couple of weeks ago at Cannes that from a media planning perspective, the ones that understand AI and how to leverage it and effectively do the work of 2 planners. And then there will be others who don't, who will be replaced by those ones that do. So there will be, as there should be in any form of productivity, a reshaping of workload. Interestingly, Wesley, who was one of the co-founders of Media Monks, he said it in a slightly different way, saying that media planners are now the travel agents of the noughties. I don't think he was overly being complimentary, but it's.
I think there's a gross misunderstanding of what media planners can and what they do on a day-to-day basis. Like, if it's just, I could see AI as a utility replacing sort of like functions around ad ops and some sort of manual optimization, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, the planning function, synthesizing data, looking at the opportunity available for clients, I just don't see in the immediate term anyway, maybe like if this does happen in 10 years, none of us are going to have a job, like, because AI will just everywhere. It'll be like that Disney film where we all just become fat and live in a spaceship. What was that? WALL-E. Yeah, that would be all like characters from WALL-E, like floating around in space, realize not knowing what to do, like, because the AI is doing everything for us. So maybe that's our future. It's two fat lads in space.
I'll sign up. I've always wanted to go to space. I prefer the word enhance rather than replace, and that doesn't mean that it won't have impact on size of agencies and everything else, but I don't think it is going to do it all on its own. That said, and just to prove that Ciaran and I can be wrong, heaven forbid, last week when we were having a chat, we were talking around performance creative and multivariate optimization and some of the things that machine learning have done well that AI can enhance. But we did say that we didn't think it would immediately start getting into the brand creative territory. But literally on Friday, Motorola launched their campaign, entirely AI created, models, the environments that they're in, the music, all AI generated, and it's good. I'd urge you all to have a look at it. It's on campaign. I think it looks really good, and even to a relatively experienced, trained industry eye, I think it very much holds up, let alone against the vast majority of consumers who don't always pay full attention. But the thing I particularly liked about it, according to campaign, it still took 4 months of research. It still took a team using 9 different AI tools, and heaven forbid they were working with an agency called Heaven, funnily enough. So there is still a role for AI. I do think, though, how it enhances, whether it's creative or media or just general operations, synthetic data, I think, is a really interesting territory, particularly in the market research space. Mark Ritson, a couple of weeks ago, was talking about Evidenza, a business set up by a couple of ex-LinkedIn employees, and Mark was saying that, or proclaiming that AI customers can now deliver a 95% match to real survey results. So if you can get that close, quicker, cheaper, smarter. I know that internally when we've been discussing it, there's cultural nuance, there's cultural understanding that needs to be enhanced and refined, but that is an area that will impact agency land for sure. And I do think just on podcasting, I know emerging audio is a trend that we talked about, the road to ATS about 15 months ago, and it's coming up in a panel a bit later on. I've been really impressed, but there's a business called Wondercraft that is doing, you literally type your script and then computer-generated audio, and it's now enhanced with feelings, with accents. You can upload your own voice. That starts to get into interesting territory when you look at audiobooks, and there's a
ton of stuff. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I'm going to pitch you my idea for a AI-powered jingle ad network. So I feel that the audio jingle is coming back. I'm training on 1950s, 60s, and 70s jingles, basically. And then I'm going to aggregate like inventory and run the jingles on it.
Sonic brand trigger.
Yeah. I need a trading deal. Let's talk later on. On that note, Leigh, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for that run through. We could talk up here for hours, but unfortunately we've run out of time. But thank you very much for your time, and thank you for listening. Cheers.
Pleasure. Thank you all. Cheers.